Tashina bought her daughter a toy that recorded and repeated voices. The next day, she wanted to hear the funny things her little girl had been saying, but all of a sudden, she heard her husband's voice coming right out that stuffed bunny. Before we get into it, sound off in the comments and let us know where y'all tuning in from. Hope y'all enjoy today's story. The toy store was on the first floor of the mall, and it always smelled exactly the same. Brand new plastic, fresh cardboard, and a lingering scent of sweet glaze drifting over from the food court. Tashina was walking down the aisles holding tight to Zuri's little hand, running through a mental checklist that only existed in her own head. Hit the pharmacy, pick up the packages for her online boutique, and get home in time to whip up that pound cake from scratch, because her mother-in-law was coming over for Sunday dinner tomorrow, and a real woman ain't about to have her mother-in-law sit at the table without something freshly baked in the house. Zuri kept tugging at her mama's coat sleeve, pulling her toward the stuffed animals, her little pink sneakers tapping on the shiny floor as she kept repeating that eternal chant, "Mama, Mommy, just let me look." Looking was a safe word. Tashina always okayed looking, because looking didn't mean buying. They turned down the aisle, and right there was a whole wall of bears in plaid shirts, foxes wearing boaties, and cats with glasses. Zuri stopped for a split second, scanning that crowd with the dead serious look of somebody who already knows exactly what they want, and marched straight to the bottom shelf. Sitting right in the middle of all the rest was a stuffed pink rabbit with long ears, black button eyes, and a little plastic button on its paw. A cardboard tag pinned to its belly promised in big letters that the toy repeated everything, recorded voices, sang songs, and was supposed to be any child's best friend. Zuri grabbed that bunny with both hands, pressed her face against it, and looked up at her mama with that specific look Tashina knew like the back of her hand. With that same look, her baby girl had already finessed a third ride on the carousel at the park when the money was long gone and the operator just waved them on. With that same look, she'd secure an extra cookie from her grandma, an extra bedtime story from her daddy, and an extra walk around the block from Tashina herself, even on days when her feet were killing her after work. "Mama," the little girl whispered, acting like the bunny could hear her and get its feelings hurt. "He's alive." Tashina squatted down and felt that pink ear. The fabric was soft, but you could tell it was that cheap kind that gets all matted up after 3 washes. She flipped the price tag, looked at the number, and closed her eyes for a quick second. $40 wasn't impossible, but it definitely wasn't something you just swipe your card for without thinking. Her mental spreadsheet was already pulling up. Daycare paid, rent paid, customer orders shipped out. But car insurance was due next month. Zuri was outgrowing her clothes, and Kashan had been running his mouth about the tires on the Nissan getting bald. "Baby girl," Tashina tried softly. "Let's just look a little bit more. Look at this little kitty cat, ain't it cute?" She guided the child's hand to the next shelf, where a cat with a knitted scarf was sitting, costing a third of the price. Zuri looked at the cat with the fake politeness of somebody greeting a distant cousin at a family cookout, then hugged that rabbit right back to her chest. The rabbit had been chosen. Case closed. A young salesgirl with laid edges and a uniform polo walked by, took in the scene, and smiled. "Press the little button," she told the girl. "He talks, too." Zuri, refusing to let the toy go, pressed the paw with all the seriousness in the world. The rabbit stayed quiet for a second, then blurted out in a cheerful, slightly metallic voice, "Hi, I am your friend." The little girl held her breath. Tashina couldn't help but laugh because her daughter's face was way too serious, like she had just been introduced to somebody of high importance. "And there's more," the salesgirl kept going. "If you press it twice real quick, it starts recording. Whatever you tell it, it repeats right back. The kids go crazy over it." "It records?" Tashina asked. "It holds about 30 minutes. When it gets full, it just deletes the oldest stuff and records over it. It's basic, but trust me, my little nephew had one just like it and didn't let that thing go for 3 months." Zuri had already double-tapped the button. She brought the rabbit right up to her mouth and whispered dead into its ear, "My name is Zuri. I'm 4 years old." 1 second later, that same cheerful voice bounced back. "My name is Zuri. I'm 4 years old." The little girl stared at the toy like a real live animal was living up inside all that stuffing. An animal that actually understood what she was saying. Tashina let out a heavy breath. She already knew she was walking out of there with it. Not because of the price, and not because her child needed another toy. Lord knows there were so many toys at the house that every Saturday she'd fill a whole plastic bin and shove it under the bed. It was something else. Lately, the little girl hadn't been laughing as much. It wasn't that Zuri was walking around depressed. Kids always got their own little world going on. But Tashina had noticed the apartment had gotten way too quiet, that her daughter was paying too much attention to the grown folks' conversations in the kitchen, that she had stopped running and hollering down the hallway. Now, she just played in her room, being extra careful not to bother nobody. At 4 years old, a child shouldn't be carrying that kind of caution. "We'll take it," Tashina said. Zuri nodded, holding it all in like a grown woman, acting like things couldn't possibly be any other way, and she didn't let that rabbit go at the register, in the elevator, or in the car. They drove home in that thick, late-afternoon traffic. A light drizzle was falling, the windshield wipers swiping the rain away, headlights blinking in the distance. Tashina was steering with one hand, occasionally reaching back to fix her daughter's coat, which was always sliding off her shoulder. From the car seat came, "My name is Zuri, I'm 4 years old," and right after, the mechanical echo. Then the little girl taught it something new. "I like waffles." And the obedient rabbit repeated the part about the waffles. Tashina heard that and caught herself genuinely smiling for the first time all day. Her morning had been the usual grind. Fulfilling orders, making phone calls, arguing with the post office because they messed up the delivery address again. Catching an attitude from a customer complaining her package arrived with a dent. Then, daycare drop-off, city traffic, the store. And now, the dark settling in outside, the warm breathing of her baby in the back seat, the little voice coming from the toy. For a few minutes, you could actually believe everything was all good. Their apartment building welcomed them with that same old lobby, smelling like somebody on the 3rd floor was cooking up greens, and the front door that she and Kashan had been saying they were going to replace for 2 years straight. Zuri ran inside without even taking off her coat, urgently needing to introduce the rabbit to the living room. Tashina lingered in the hallway, kicked off her shoes, dropped her shopping bags on the entryway table, and leaned her shoulder against the wall. Just for a second, her head was pounding. Sitting on the table was half a cup of cold coffee in her favorite chipped mug, still sitting there from the morning. The place smelled faintly like burnt toast from a piece of bread she forgot in the skillet before she left. Just a regular night for a regular family. Except, underneath those everyday smells, there was something else. Something Tashina couldn't quite put a name to. A heavy tension hanging in the rooms, like somebody had stretched an invisible string from wall to wall, and she kept tripping over it without seeing it. While she was warming up dinner, a plate of leftover red beans and rice with smoked sausage, Tashina could hear her daughter running down the hall hugging that rabbit. The stuffed animal had already been introduced to the rug, the sofa, the TV, and the shoe rack. From the bedroom she could hear, "And this is my bed, and this is my closet, and this is my mama." Then the click of the button and the cheerful voice repeating, "And this is my mama." Tashina chuckled to herself over the stove. The neighbor's big orange tomcat, Rusty, was outside the door meowing for attention like he did every single day. Zuri pressed the rabbit's ear against the door, hit record, and whispered, "Listen, listen." Rusty let out a meow. The rabbit played it back, but it sounded so unconvincing it came out sounding like a cat with a bad cold. The little girl laughed until she was practically choking. The key turned in the lock at the usual time. Kashan usually got back from work around this hour, and it had been a long time since Tashina bothered asking where he had been when he showed up late. She used to ask. Now, she had learned to keep her mouth shut. He walked in, took off his jacket, hung up his bag, and went straight to wash his hands. That ritual was practically religious. "Daddy, Daddy, look!" Zuri ran to meet him, holding the rabbit out in her arms. Kashan bent down, rubbed his daughter's hair, and looked at the toy without an ounce of interest. His face looked drained, deep bags under his eyes, his hair pressed flat against his forehead. He smelled like dark roast coffee and something else. Maybe office, bathroom, soap, maybe just the streets. "Nice bunny," he said, trying to be polite. "Look, big ears," he talks, "listen." The little girl pressed the button, and the toy cheerfully announced, "And this is my mama." Kashan looked up at Tashina, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in her hands, and let out a little scoff. "Well, look at that. Bought another chatterbox for the house. Lord knows one was already enough." He said it with a half smile, like he was just cracking a joke. But a tight knot formed right between Tashina's shoulder blades. She forced herself to smile back, because Zuri was looking back and forth between the two of them. "Come on and eat," she said, her voice flat. "Food's hot." The three of them ate at the kitchen table. Outside, it was fully dark, the yellow light bulb above the table reflecting against the window pane. Zuri sat the rabbit right next to her plate, occasionally holding her spoon up to its nose to ask if the food was good. Kashan ate in silence, staring down at his phone. It didn't used to be like this. Before, If Tashina leaned her elbow on the table or reached across him for the hot sauce, he'd crack a joke or say something sweet. Now, that phone was basically an extension of his hand. "How was your day?" she asked him. "Regular," he answered, not even looking up. "Long meeting." "With who?" "Management. You don't know him anyway." Tashina kept quiet. She used to know them. He used to talk about his coworkers by their first names. He'd come home with some funny story about his manager, or the girl in finance who always messed up the numbers. Slowly, those stories dried up until everything just became regular, tired, or long. She couldn't even pinpoint when it happened. There was no specific day. At some point, she just realized she had no earthly idea what he actually did down there anymore, beyond the generic word work. "I'm coming in late on Friday," he said, still glued to his screen. "Going out with the fellas." "That's fine. I got a big shipment going out Friday too. I'll be finishing up late." "Cool." He finally looked up, and there was absolutely nothing in his eyes. No love, no annoyance, no curiosity. Just the dull gray background of a tired man. "By the way, you pay the daycare?" "Yeah." "And the Wi-Fi?" "That too." "You sure?" "Last time we got a late notice." Tashina slowly set her fork down. "The last time was 2 months ago, and the bill was late because he borrowed her debit card for 1 minute to pay his own car insurance, forgot to give it back, and her autopay bounced." She didn't say a word about it at the time because she hated arguing about money in front of the baby. Instead, that very same day, she went and opened a separate checking account just for the household bills, and never handed her card over to anybody ever again. "I'm sure," she answered softly. "I'm always sure." He shrugged and went right back to his phone. Zuri, completely oblivious, was busy feeding the rabbit an imaginary piece of sausage. After dinner, Tashina washed the dishes while Kashan went to the bedroom with his laptop. Through the door, she could hear a muffled mumbling. He was talking to somebody, but keeping his voice real low, almost whispering, like somebody terrified of being overheard. He used to talk on the phone loud and bold, pacing all around the house. Tashina just stood at the sink scrubbing a plate, the dishwater running down her wrist and right up the sleeve of her shirt. She didn't try to eavesdrop. She just washed the dishes. Later on, when the little girl started rubbing her eyes, Tashina took her to get washed up. The bathroom was warm, the mirror fogged up, the bubbles smelling like chamomile. Zuri sat in the tub with the rabbit propped up on the edge and told him all about her whole day. Daycare, a boy named Marcus who took her yellow crayon, and Miss Yvette giving it back because she tapped into his conscience. Tapped into his conscience was a phrase she picked up from her grandma. The child had memorized it and was throwing it around left and right now. While washing her daughter's back, it suddenly hit Tashina that she couldn't even remember the last time she and Kashan just sat and talked. Not about bills, or daycare, or jobs. Just talking to talk. About nothing at all, like back when they first moved in together and used to stay up till 2 in the morning in the kitchen debating nonsense. She felt a deep, aching sadness, but it was a quiet, old kind of sad. Like a bad tooth that aches real low, the kind of pain you just get used to carrying around. "Mama," Zuri said, "why is Daddy sad today?" Tashina stopped with the washcloth in her hand. "He ain't sad, my baby. He's just tired. Daddy works real hard." "Why, he got a lot of work and you only got a little bit?" Tashina managed a small smile. "I got a lot too, but my work is right here inside the house, so you don't always see it right away. Daddy's work is far away." The child thought about it. Then she nodded with that same dead serious look from the store. "Okay, then let him work. Me and Bunny gonna wait for him." Tashina wrapped her up in a big fluffy towel, sat her on her lap, and just stayed like that for a minute, breathing in the smell of that baby shampoo. Through the wall, she heard Kashan shut his laptop, stand up, walk down the hall, and slide the balcony door open. Going out for a smoke, even though he swore up and down he was quitting since the summer. Tashina thought about it with a strange distance, like it was a fact about somebody else's life. She laid the little girl down in her favorite pajamas, the ones with the little bunnies on them. Funny how that worked out tonight. The pink-eared rabbit was tucked right by her shoulder. Zuri hugged it tight, the way you only hug something you truly love, and was out like a light almost instantly. Tashina sat next to her, fixed her blanket, smoothed down her hair. The star-shaped nightlight threw soft yellow shapes across the ceiling. Outside, that same drizzle was still falling. The windows in the building across the street were glowing yellow. She stood up carefully so the floorboards wouldn't creak. At the bedroom door, she turned back around. Zuri was fast asleep with the rabbit pressed right up against her face. Everything was in order, quiet, peaceful, just like in thousands of other apartments across the city that night. But deep down inside Tashina, moving real slow, was that ache she couldn't put a name to. That creeping feeling of forgetting something major and not being able to figure out what it was. She cleared her throat, cracked the door, and went to finish washing the cups. In the kitchen, Tashina wiped down the sink and hung the dish towel on its hook. From the bedroom, she could hear the rapid-fire tapping of a keyboard. Kashan was still on the laptop, replying to somebody on a messaging app. She walked past the half-open door without even glancing inside and headed into her daughter's room, where clothes were tossed on the rug along with some building blocks and half a puzzle. The child always fell asleep before cleaning up her mess. The room was warm and quiet. The nightlight covered the ceiling in yellow stars. Zuri was sleeping on her side with her knees pulled up, her steady breathing the only living sound. Tashina picked up the pajama top, folded it, laid it on the chair, threw the blocks back into their plastic bin, and put away a wooden bear, missing an ear, and a crumpled-up little book. The rabbit was on the pillow next to her daughter, with one ear flopped over the child's face. Tashina grabbed the toy to move it out the way, about to set it down next to the pillow, but she stopped. All of a sudden, she got the urge to hear what her baby had been whispering into it all night. Sometimes she'd send those recordings to her own mama and her mother-in-law. Her girls would melt over them, and she kept them all saved in a special folder on her phone. Figured she'd add one more to the stash. She sat on the edge of the bed, rested the rabbit in her lap, and pressed the button. First came Zuri's giggle, the same one from the bathroom when she was laughing at Rusty through the door. Then, a sweet little whisper. "My mama is pretty." Tashina couldn't help but smile. She smoothed out the stuffed animal's ear. Next came some babbling, a piece of a song, more giggles. She was just about to press it again to hear the whole loop, her finger already resting on the plastic paw. And that was the exact moment Kashan's voice came through the speaker. It took Tashina a second to even process that it was him. The voice sounded muffled, coming from a distance, like the rabbit had been sitting in another room picking up sound through a closed door. He was talking low but crystal clear. She froze, her hand hovering right in the air. "She don't suspect nothing. I already told you. Just hold on a little bit longer. We gotta get the evaluation done. After that, we handle everything at once." Pause. Somebody was answering on the other end, but the speaker hadn't picked up that voice, only his. "Nah, I can't do it right by her. She in the kitchen right now. No, I ain't splitting up in a week. Don't rush me. Everything gotta be set up perfect." Click. The recording stopped. Tashina was sitting up straight as a board. Her ears started ringing, like all the air pressure in the room had just dropped. She stared at the toy in her hands, then over at her sleeping baby, then back at the toy. Her first thought was the simplest and the most foolish one. I heard it wrong. Her second thought, it could be a game, some internet video Zuri recorded by accident. Her third thought hit her ice cold and absolutely crystal clear. I didn't hear it wrong. She pressed the button again. The rabbit cheerfully announced, "My name is Zuri. I'm 4 years old." Then the waffles, then the cat meowing. She pressed it again. Giggles. "My mama's pretty." Tashina shut her eyes tight, struggling to pull in a clean breath. The toy was jumping from one recording to another with no real logic. It seemed like if you held the paw down a little longer, it pulled up an older clip. She started testing it, and the speaker spit out Kashan's voice again, only this time it was closer, crisper, like he had been standing right next to the toy when he said it. "I swear to God, I thought of everything. She's gonna sink her own ship. Look at her. She walking around exhausted, nerves shot to pieces." Pause. Another unheard response. "I'm bringing her by next week. But look, just one thing. When you talk to the little girl, take it easy. I need Zuri to get used to you, otherwise it's gonna be a mess later." Click. Tashina slowly lowered the toy back into her lap. She realized she was gripping the soft body of that rabbit so hard her knuckles had turned completely white. She had to force her hand open, press her palm flat against the blanket, and just stare at her hand trembling ever so slightly. Outside, the rain was coming down soft. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator kicked on. From the next room, the clicking of the keyboard kept going. She stood up, tiptoed right to the door, and pressed her ear to it. Kashan was typing, not talking, which meant these recordings weren't from tonight. Zuri had picked up his conversations at different times while running around the house with the rabbit. Out in the hallway by the balcony where he smoked and took his calls. Right by the cracked bedroom door when he was on his laptop. He was so caught up he never even noticed a big-eared stuffed animal with a glowing button sitting right next to him. Tashina went back and sat down. The simple math of it all made her sick to her stomach. If the rabbit caught him this many times, it meant he was talking like this constantly. It wasn't just one slip-up. This was his routine, right in front of his child. He had just gotten so used to assuming the baby was busy with her toys that he didn't even bother closing doors anymore. The recording skipped again, and this time, the Kashan coming out of the speaker was entirely different, not the one on the phone. This was the one talking to his daughter. His voice was soft, sweet, the kind of voice he hadn't used with Tashina in a long time. Zuri, let's play Mama's secret. But you can't tell nobody, all right? It's a secret just for us. The little girl's sweet voice. Okay. Look, if a lady comes over here, a nice lady, and she starts asking you how Mama acts, you tell her that Mama cries a lot. You gonna tell her that? Pause. But Mama don't cry. So what if she don't cry? It's a game. You just say, Mama cries. Mama yells. Mama forgets to pick me up from daycare. Mama don't feed me. Just that, okay? But why? It's a game. Whoever remembers the most stuff wins a prize. You want a prize? Yeah, I want it. All right, repeat after me. Mama cries a lot. Silence. Then, real small and unsure. Mama cries a lot. Mama yells. Mama yells, good girl. Now Mama can't do it by herself. Pause. And then Zuri's voice came out sounding so lost. Not childish at all. Daddy, can Mama really not do it by herself? No, baby, it's just a game. Our Mama is good. Just repeat it so Daddy can hear you. Okay. Mama can't do it by herself. That's it. That's my girl. Click. Tashina's arms dropped. She sat on the edge of that bed, staring at her sleeping child, completely paralyzed. She felt like if she tried to stand up right now, her legs would give out. Inside, she was freezing cold and completely hollow. Her thoughts were coming in short, simple bursts, like she forgot how to think in complete sentences. He taught her. He taught my baby to lie on me. On me. Her own mother. Zuri sighed in her sleep, rolled over, and smacked her lips. Tashina watched the little hand grabbing at empty space. She gently laid the toy next to her daughter's shoulder so she wouldn't wake up, then instantly snatched it right back. She couldn't stomach leaving those ears anywhere near her baby's face. She pulled it into her own stomach, gripping it tight. The rabbit smelled like cheap plastic and a hint of baby shampoo. The child had squeezed it with wet hands in the bathroom. Tashina jammed her own closed fist into her mouth, because the first sound that tried to rip its way out of her chest didn't sound human at all. She swallowed that sound right down her throat. She couldn't cry. She couldn't scream. If she marched into that kitchen right now and hurled that rabbit in his face, Kashan would look at her with those calm, dead eyes and say, "What are you talking about? Listen to yourself. It's a toy. It's glitching. You in here making up stuff again." And in 10 minutes, the guilty, hysterical, unhinged woman, standing there shaking and screaming at her husband over a broken stuffed animal, would be her. He knew exactly how to play that game. He'd been playing it for a long time. She closed her eyes and forced herself to count to 10, then did it again. She took a slow, deep breath through her nose. Outside, an ambulance siren wailed, bleeding through the window before fading out into the night. She found herself staring dead at a spot on the wall. Right there was a little yellow giraffe decal she and Kashan had stuck up together. When the baby was 6 months old, they put it up laughing, arguing because she put it on crooked and he swore it was perfect. Tonight, that memory felt like it belonged to a whole different woman. She pressed the button one more time. She needed to hear every single bit of it all the way to the end, so that tomorrow, the day after, or a week from now, nobody on this green earth could ever fix their mouth to tell her she imagined it. The rabbit obediently looped the same pieces. The babbling, the cat, the muffled hallway voice, the sickening sweet whispers near the bed. Tashina listened to the whole thing for a third time, and with every single replay, it sunk deeper into her bones that she wasn't tripping, she wasn't crazy, and she wasn't exaggerating a damn thing. Her fingers went ice cold, like she had been standing out on the balcony with no coat on. She didn't even realize she couldn't feel her knees until she tried to shift her leg and felt that pins and needles burn, realizing just how long she had been sitting there frozen. And in that moment, something else clicked. Something that yesterday, or even this morning, she would have been too ashamed to admit. All those times he said, "You're too anxious. You're always trying to control everything. Look at your nerves. Don't make that face in front of the baby. Here goes her mama with the drama again." That wasn't just a tired man snapping at his wife. That was groundwork. He wasn't losing his temper. He was carefully, night after night, week after week, planting a simple idea in her head and in the heads of everybody around them. Tashina ain't right in the head. Tashina is unstable. Tashina can't handle her own child. The realization of it hurt less than the shame of it. The shame of believing him for so long. The shame of justifying herself, of stumbling over her words, trying to explain that she was just tired, that she was going to try harder, that she was going to get her act together, like the heavy, toxic air in this house was somehow her fault. She looked at the door. 2 steps away sat the man she used to love, the man who held her hand in the delivery room, the man who spent the first year waking up at 3 in the morning so she could catch some sleep. That man, and this man teaching a 4-year-old girl to call her own mother crazy, did not fit in the same brain. You lay one over the other, and the edges don't line up. Her first instinct was to jump up, kick that door open, throw the toy on his lap, and hit the button. Tashina actually got halfway to her feet, then slowly sat right back down. She knew exactly how he was going to play it. He would freeze for a split second, his face would drop, and then he'd say something smooth like, "Calm down, let's not do this in front of the baby. Let's step into the kitchen." And in the kitchen, he would deny it. Then he would laugh at her. Then he would flip it and accuse her of being crazy. And later, when she went to the bathroom to wash her face, he would grab that rabbit, pop the battery cover off with his thumb, rip the batteries out, and in the morning he'd say, "What recording? Look, the toy don't even turn on. You was sleepwalking." And the very next day, he'd call up that woman, the colleague, and book that damn evaluation while Tashina was still sitting there in shock, making it real easy for them to paint her as unhinged. She saw the whole playbook with a terrifying clarity, like somebody was standing in the room reading it out loud to her. And right then, for the first time that night, something rose up inside her that was bigger than fear. It wasn't even anger, not really. It was something colder, something calculated. It was like that same anxiety he had been weaponizing against her for years, had just turned around, looked her in the face, and revealed itself not as her enemy, but as her best friend. If he was plotting, she was finna plot too. Only difference was, he took months to build his. She had tonight, and if she was lucky, maybe a day or 2 more. Tashina laid the rabbit on the blanket, tiptoed over to the dresser, grabbed her phone off the charger by the mirror, came back, and sat down. She opened her voice memos, put the phone mic right up to the rabbit's nose, and started over. Press once. Wait. Record. The rabbit spilled every single thing it still remembered. Her hands weren't shaking as much anymore. She needed copies, because she knew the toy would eventually overwrite the old audio. When she was done, she had an audio file over 20 minutes long. Half of it was a little girl's innocent giggles. The other half was the key to saving her child's life. She opened her email right then and there, sent the file to herself, then forwarded it to an old backup email Kashan didn't even know existed, one she set up back when she first started her online business. She waited until she saw the little sent checkmark. Only when it popped up did she let out the breath she was holding. Next, she took pictures of the rabbit from every angle. Sitting on the bed, a close-up in her hand, the paw with the button. She opened her notes app and typed out the date and a short description of exactly how and when she found the recordings. Not for nobody else. For herself. So that later, when she had to sit in front of strangers and tell this story, she wouldn't stutter, second guess, or forget a single detail. She placed the toy right back in its exact spot by her daughter's shoulder, making sure the ears were flopped over toward the pillow just how they were. She even smoothed the blanket out. Then, she just sat there for a long time watching her baby. The little fist balled up under her chin. The baby hairs stuck to her forehead, her long eyelashes. Her throat tightened up, and her hand went right back over her mouth. Sitting on the edge of that bed, she made herself one simple promise. Not tomorrow, not the day after, not a week from now was she going to lose her composure. Let him keep thinking his wife was the same confused, exhausted, anxious woman she'd always been. Let him calmly prep his little evaluation. Let him think everything was going exactly according to plan. She reached over, clicked off the lamp, leaving only the yellow stars spinning on the ceiling. She laid down next to her daughter on top of the covers, wrapping her arms around her baby and the rabbit at the same time. She laid there with her eyes wide open until the sun came up, listening to Zuri breathing against her neck. From the other room, it was dead silent. Kashan had either fallen asleep at the laptop or finally gone to bed. She didn't even bother going to check. It didn't make a bit of difference where he slept. For the first time in months, it truly did not matter. Morning broke gray and overcast. Tashina opened her eyes, not because she had been asleep, but because she had been staring at the ceiling for 5 minutes and finally accepted sleep wasn't coming. Her daughter was breathing softly beside her, her little nose pressed right against the rabbit's pink ear. She got up carefully and fixed the covers. In the hallway mirror, a woman with gray-looking skin and deep, hollow eyes stared back. Tashina gave herself a slight nod, like you acknowledge a neighbor passing by, and headed to the kitchen. She made oatmeal, put the water on to boil, got the butter out, sliced the cheese thin and perfect, exactly the way he liked it. She filled his favorite mug, the one that said "World's Best Dad," a gift the baby gave him for Father's Day, with 2 scoops of coffee and hot water. She moved without rushing, putting care into every step, like she had all the time in the world. Her hands barely shook at all. She even surprised herself with that. Kashan shuffled in wearing his robe, face looking crumpled, phone already in his hand. He grunted a morning and sat down without looking up. Tashina set his plate down in front of him, slid his mug over, and pushed the sugar bowl closer. "I slept terrible," he said, somewhere between a complaint and an excuse. "I heard you was up late," she answered, her voice smooth. She even managed a little smile. Nothing major, just that same tired morning smile he had been looking at for years. He nodded, took a sip of his coffee, and buried his face back in his phone. Tashina sat across from him with her teacup wrapped in both hands, staring down into her tea, not at him. She felt like if she looked up and met his eyes, he would read everything written on her face. But he didn't even lift his head. "I'm coming in later tonight," he said. "Got a big meeting." "That's fine. I'll grab Zuri from daycare. We might swing by Miss Odette's later," she said. She was baking a peach cobbler. "Go ahead," he said absent-mindedly. "Don't forget the light bill." "I won't." He finished his coffee and went to get dressed. 20 minutes later, the front door clicked shut. Tashina stayed at the table until she heard the elevator take him down, and only then did she let her head drop for a second, resting her forehead against the cool table. Done. She had passed the first test. Zuri woke up bright and early. Tashina got her dressed, greased her scalp, and put her hair in 2 neat 2-strand twists. The little girl was refusing to let go of the rabbit. "My bunny going with me." "The bunny's staying home to get some rest today," Tashina said. "He did a whole lot of talking yesterday. His little throat is tired." Her daughter thought about this explanation, decided it was fair, and solemnly sat the rabbit on the living room sofa, facing the window so he could watch the street and stay entertained. Tashina sent up a silent thank you to the Lord. On the drive, Zuri was chattering away about Marcus, about Play-Doh time, and about Miss Yvette promising to show them how to make a snowman out of cotton balls. Tashina held her warm little hand and listened like every word was gold, acting like absolutely nothing in this world mattered more than this conversation. And in a way, it was the honest truth. The daycare hallway was packed with parents peeling coats off their toddlers. Tashina changed Zuri into her inside shoes, kissed the top of her head, and stood by the cubbies for an extra few seconds, gathering every ounce of strength she had. She caught the teacher in the hallway carrying a stack of construction paper. "Miss Yvette, you got a quick second?" Miss Yvette, a seasoned woman in her 50s with a thick build and tired but kind eyes, looked at her closely. "Everything all right with Zuri?" "Not exactly. I just wanted to ask. Have you noticed her acting different lately? Has she been saying anything weird about home? About me?" Miss Yvette set the papers down on the half wall, looked around to make sure nobody was listening, and pulled Tashina over by the window, away from the other parents. "Look," she said, dropping her voice. "I was actually going to pull you to the side, but I didn't want to seem like I was getting up in grown folks' business. Earlier this week, Zuri sat right in the middle of circle time and said her mama cries all the time. 2 days after that, she said you keep forgetting to come pick her up. I pulled her aside and said, 'Zuri, sweetie, you always leave with your mama, and you're always one of the first ones out.' 'Who told you that?' She got real quiet and then said it was just a game. Now, I'm going to be straight with you. It didn't sit right with my spirit." A knot tightened in Tashina's chest, but she kept her face completely composed. "Thank you. If it came down to it, would you be willing to confirm she said that?" Miss Yvette looked at her for a long, hard minute. You could tell she figured the whole thing out in 2 seconds flat. "Baby girl, I've been watching you and that child for 3 years. You always on time, you always bring her water bottle, she always dressed right for the weather. Socks clean, forms signed. If it comes down to it, I speak on what I see. You can write that down. I'll testify." Tashina nodded. unable to get the words out. Miss Yvette patted her shoulder. You hold your head up. You hear me? Whatever foolishness is going on over there, you hold your head up. From the daycare, Tashina didn't go home. She went straight to the clinic. Zuri had a routine checkup scheduled for next week, and Tashina had called begging to squeeze them in early. The pediatrician had known them for years. Dr. Patrice, a short, sharp-moving black woman with a stylish bob, who knew half the kids in the neighborhood by heart. Tashina didn't spell the whole mess out. She just asked straight up, Doc, if you can, I need a written report stating that my baby is healthy, calm, developing perfectly for her age, and showing absolutely zero signs of neglect. Dr. Patrice looked at her over the rim of her glasses. What's going on, Tashina? Nothing physical right now. I just might need official proof that I'm a good mother real soon. The doctor gave a slow nod and pulled out her pen. Tashina just watched the pen glide across the notepad, gripping the edge of the desk so she wouldn't pass out. Next stop was Miss Odette's place up on the 4th floor. She had known Tashina since the day they moved into the building. Miss Odette was right in the middle of pulling a peach cobbler out the oven. The whole apartment smelled like butter, cinnamon, and nutmeg, and a massive orange cat was watching everything from the counter with one good eye. Tashina sat at the kitchen table. She turned down the coffee, she turned down the cobbler, and then, for the first time since last night, she broke down and cried. Miss Odette didn't ask a single question until Tashina had cried herself out. She just slid a napkin over and rested her warm hand on Tashina's wrist. Once she caught her breath, Tashina gave her the rundown. The rabbit. What Kashan was teaching the baby, the woman he was planning to bring to the house. Miss Odette listened without interrupting, only pausing to shake her head and whisper, Lord have mercy. All right, listen to me, Miss Odette said when she finished. The minute you know the exact day this chick is coming over, you text me. That day, I ain't leaving the house. I ain't even stepping in the hallway. If anything pops off, I'll be at your front door in 60 seconds with my husband right behind me. You hear me? Tashina nodded silently. She got back to her own apartment around noon. She had about an hour before she had to go get Zuri. She sat down at her laptop and opened the digital folder where she had been religiously saving all the household receipts for years. Rent, maintenance, daycare tuition, extracurriculars, Zuri's clothes, everything organized by date, month to month. She printed out the heavy hitters and organized them into a plastic binder. Threw in the shot records, birth certificates, and insurance copies. Then, she grabbed her husband's tablet. It was the house tablet, meant for everybody. They used it to look at pictures, and Zuri watched cartoons on it. Tashina had known the passcode forever. It was his birthday, he never bothered to change it. She swiped it open, feeling like she was crossing some invisible line, but there was no turning back now. She opened the messaging apps and found the thread with Shanice almost immediately. It was sickening to read, not because it was wildly scandalous, but because it was so terrifyingly normal. Like he and this woman had already built a whole parallel routine to the one he had with Tashina. Shanice wrote, Don't forget I got my doctor's appointment Wednesday. Kashan answered, I got you. I'll take you. Shanice wrote, Your mom called again. Kashan answered, Leave it alone. She'll get over it. And buried in between all that everyday talk were the texts that made Tashina's chest physically hurt. The little one will adjust quick. Kids that age forget everything in a month. The main thing is getting out clean legally. After that, we golden. Just take it easy with her for now. You gotta make her feel like family. Tashina took her phone and snapped pictures of the tablet screen. Every conversation, making sure the timestamps and the contact names were visible. Then she found his texts with 2 of his boys. Kashan was complaining exactly how you'd expect him to. Man, my wife is losing her mind. Always anxious, crying over nothing, she don't get it. I carry this whole house on my back. She documented that too. The phrase I carry this whole house on my back gave her a weird, brief feeling. Not pain, just a tired kind of recognition. Those were the exact words she secretly thought about herself. She just never said them out loud. About an hour later, she closed the tablet and placed it back in its exact spot on the table, lining up the corners just right. The copies of everything went straight to that secret email and into the cloud, sitting right next to the audio files from the rabbit. By the afternoon, Tashina was sitting in the office of an attorney Miss Odette swore by, Attorney Maxine. A sharp, composed black woman in her 40s with a short, natural cut. The office was small and no nonsense, a Yeti tumbler on the desk and a framed picture of 2 teenagers. Tashina laid the whole story out in chronological order, dry-eyed. Her voice only cracked once, when she repeated the audio clip of Zuri saying, "Mama can't do it by herself." The attorney listened intently, taking notes here and there. "The evidence you brought me today," Maxine said when she finished. "It's phenomenal. Very organized. Most folks come up in here running off pure emotion without a single piece of paper to their name. You're the exact opposite. That is your biggest advantage." Tashina nodded. "I just need to protect my baby. Everything else can wait." "We are going to protect your baby," Attorney Maxine said calmly. "With these receipts, your position is bulletproof, especially if he brings this fake professional into your home. And believe me, he's going to bring her. Probably sooner rather than later. Here is exactly what we are going to do." They talked for 40 minutes. Attorney Maxine broke down exactly what Tashina needed to say, how she needed to act the night of the visit, what to record, and where to send it immediately. Tashina listened and nodded. For the first time in 24 hours, the panic was gone. In its place was something that felt a lot like solid ground. From the lawyer's office, she headed to a child wellness center to see Dr. Rosalind, a child psychologist. They had set it up under the guise of a routine behavioral check-in. Dr. Rosalind asked Zuri about daycare, her toys, her mama, her daddy. Real casual, keeping it light. At one point, she asked, "Do you play any secret games?" Zuri, who was deep into coloring a picture of a hedgehog, looked up. "Yeah, Mama's secret." Underneath the table, Tashina gripped her own hands together so tight they hurt. Dr. Rosalind nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. "You gonna tell me how to play? Or is it a real secret?" Well, the little girl thought about it. "Daddy said if a lady asks me, I gotta say Mama cries. But it's just a game." "And do you really think Mama cries?" Zuri looked over at her mama, then back at the doctor. "No, my mama don't cry. My mama is good." "But Daddy said it's a game for a prize." Dr. Rosalind jotted something down on her legal pad, smiled at the child, and handed her a fresh sheet of paper. Later, when Zuri stepped out to grab a toy from the playroom next door, she turned to Tashina. "I'm typing up a formal written report," she said, keeping her voice low. "I'm putting her exact quotes in there, dated for today. If it goes to court, I'll testify as an expert witness. What the father is doing is textbook psychological abuse against this child, and I'm putting it on record just like that." Tashina just nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. They got back home late in the afternoon. Tashina walked in with a steady step, took off her coat, washed her hands, and put a pot of water on for pasta. Routine as ever. Zuri ran to greet the rabbit, who had been patiently waiting on the sofa, and started whispering in his ear. Kashan came home that night looking tired but carrying this weird, jittery energy, a spark in his eye. He kissed his daughter's head and gave Tashina a lazy peck on the cheek, like he was just stamping a time card. At dinner, he was almost acting affectionate. "Hey," he said casually, scooping some salad onto his plate. "There's this woman from work. Real good people. She's a family psychologist, actually. I was thinking about inviting her over on Thursday. We could have some coffee, let her play with Zuri a little bit, just get a professional set of eyes on things. Won't cost us a dime, she's a friend." Tashina chewed her food real slow, swallowed. "Thursday," she repeated. "That's fine. Invite her." She even managed a smile, a calm, serene smile. "See?" He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "I'm looking out for us. You've been looking real overwhelmed lately. Let somebody from the outside take a look. Maybe she can give us some pointers." Tashina stared down at his hand covering hers. A warm hand she knew down to the last knuckle. She carefully slid her hand out from under his, using the excuse of passing a dinner roll to Zuri. "I appreciate you thinking about me," she said. Deep into the night, while everybody was asleep, Tashina sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold tea. The drizzle was back outside, and the streetlights in the parking lot were glowing in the dark. She unlocked her phone and shot a quick text to Miss Odette. "Thursday, early evening. Please make sure you're home." The reply came back in 60 seconds. "I'm already here." She sent the same message to Attorney Maxine. The lawyer replied, "Noted. We stick to the plan." Tashina set her phone down and just sat there in the dark a little while longer. The freezing, hollow panic from the night before was completely gone. Now it was just a quiet, ironclad determination, almost like it belonged to a different person. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like life was dragging her by the collar. She was driving now, and she only had 2 days left. Thursday arrived and Tashina felt steady, no shaking. She dropped her daughter off at daycare in the morning. On the way back, she stopped at the store and bought a pack of good cookies and a nice box of chocolates. The kind you set out on the coffee table when you got company. She set out clean mugs in the kitchen, wiped down the table, and put a fresh dish towel on the stove handle, making it look like she was genuinely ready to host. Except, she placed her phone face up on the living room counter, the voice memos app already open and ready. She even had an old backup phone fully charged and sitting right next to it, just in case. Kashan came home early, putting on a big show of being relaxed, and even helped set the table. Walking past her, he casually dropped. Main thing is, just don't get anxious. She's good people. Tashina just nodded. Zuri was sitting on the living room rug, tucking the rabbit into a little toy bed, and whispering secrets into its pink ear. The doorbell rang right at the start of the evening. The guest looked to be about Tashina's age, wearing a sharp gray blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. She introduced herself as Chantel, smiled politely, one of those trained, automatic smiles. She went to the kitchen, sat down, accepted a cup of coffee, pulled out a notepad, and jumped right into protocol. How long have y'all lived here? Who handles childcare? What's the evening routine look like? Tashina kept her answers short and to the point. Kashan kept interrupting her, like a man in a hurry to get to the punchline. Look, I'm going to be completely real with you, he said, pouring Chantel a little more coffee. Tashina is a wonderful woman, but lately, everything's just been too heavy for her. She gets real anxious. Her memory is slipping. Just yesterday, she almost left Zuri up at the daycare. I didn't leave her, Tashina said quietly. Well, you didn't leave her, but you were late. I'm just saying this because we need help. From the outside, you see things better. Chantel nodded sympathetically, taking notes. Eventually, she asked if she could speak to the little girl. Zuri walked into the kitchen hugging the rabbit, climbed right into her mama's lap, and stared at the strange lady without much interest. Chantel flashed that professional smile. Tashina recognized it immediately. It wasn't warm. It was strictly business. Zuri, tell me what things are like at home. How is your mama? The little girl thought for a second. My mama is good. She does my twists. And your daddy? Daddy is good too, but he be at work a lot. Do mommy and daddy ever fight? Zuri shrugged. Kashan cleared his throat. Baby, he said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. Remember what you were telling me about how mama cries sometimes? Tell the nice lady about the game we play. Tashina didn't flinch. She just slowly rested her hand on her daughter's knee. A silent, I'm right here. Zuri looked at her daddy, then at her mama, then back at her daddy. Her little bottom lip started quivering. Daddy, she said, her voice small. This ain't a game no more, is it? The kitchen went dead silent. Chantel stopped writing. Kashan forced a stiff smile. What's wrong, baby? Just tell her how we play. We play Mama's secret, Zuri said, and before anybody could stop it, she started crying softly. No screaming, just tears rolling down her cheeks. You told me to say Mama cries, but Mama don't cry. Mama is good. She buried her face right into Tashina's shirt. Tashina slowly lifted her eyes and locked onto her husband. He went pale. He opened his mouth to try and spin it, but for the first time in his life, he couldn't find a single word. Tashina reached her arm out and grabbed her phone off the counter. Chantel spoke up, her voice suddenly rigid. I believe you need to hear one more thing before you write up that report. She hit play. First came the little girl's giggle, then a click. Then his sickeningly sweet voice. Mama cries a lot. Repeat it. And the tiny, fragile voice. Mama cries a lot. The next audio clip was his phone conversation, the evaluation, the she don't suspect nothing. Chantel slowly pushed her coffee cup away. She looked at Kashan, then down at the portfolio in her lap. She closed it real carefully. Kashan, she said, holding her composure by a thread. Did I understand correctly that you invited me here tonight in a professional capacity to evaluate the living conditions of this child? That's a setup, he blurted out. She edited it. You edited that. He lunged toward the phone. Tashina pulled her hand back, perfectly calm. My lawyer already has the copies, she said. And they sitting in my email, and 2 other places. Don't even waste your energy. Chantel stood up. I am deeply offended that you tried to use me for this, she said, her voice ice cold. I will have absolutely no part of this mess. Have a good night. She walked out into the hallway. Tashina heard her put her coat on, heard the front door slam. And 3 seconds later, the doorbell gave a familiar, sharp ring. Miss Odette. Tashina didn't even have time to text her, but clearly, the older woman had been out there monitoring the hallway on her own watch. Tashina, baby! she announced loud and clear right from the entryway. "I brought that cobbler you asked for." She marched right into the kitchen, leaned against the doorframe, crossed her arms, and stared Kashan down with the serenity of a black woman who had seen absolutely everything this world had to offer. "Well," she said, "I'm staying right here." Kashan lost his mind. First, he yelled that Tashina set him up, that she was crazy, that he was taking her to court, that he was taking his daughter no matter what. Then, on a dime, he flipped the script. He started begging, said he lost his way, that Shanice was a mistake, that he was going to fix everything, that for the sake of the baby, they had to make it work. Tashina just listened in silence. Zuri had stopped crying. She was sitting in her mama's lap, staring at her daddy with big, dry eyes. Eyes that a 4-year-old child should not have. "Pack your stuff," Tashina said when he finally ran out of breath. "You sleeping at your mama's house tonight. The rest, we handle through the lawyer." He packed, took his sweet time tearing the bedroom apart, and finally walked out with a half-zipped duffel bag. At the front door, he turned around, tried to say something to his daughter. The little girl turned her face away and buried it into Tashina's shoulder. Kashan just stood there for a second, then stepped out and pulled the door shut behind him. Miss Odette walked over, rubbed the little girl's head, and then put her hand on Tashina's shoulder. "You, a strong woman, baby," she whispered. "Now just breathe. Just breathe." What came next was heavy. He called every day. 1 minute making threats, the next minute crying and begging. He tried to send messages through his mama, claiming he had seen the light. One time, he actually showed up at the front door, and Miss Odette stepped out her apartment and explained to him with crystal clarity that he was not welcome on this floor. Among their mutual friends, some distanced themselves from Tashina, others cut him off. Her mother-in-law called once and said some things she had no business saying. A week later, she called back to apologize. Tashina accepted it politely, but kept it strictly business. Attorney Maxine worked with calm, lethal precision. The audio recordings, the text messages with Shanice, the psychologist's report, the pediatrician's letter, and the sworn statement from the daycare teacher were all neatly bound in a single folder. Once Kashan's lawyer saw that stack of receipts, Kashan completely dropped the custody battle. The only thing left on the table was visitation, which would happen strictly on the terms set by the family court and the professionals involved. Shanice ghosted him before the ink was even dry. The second she realized she was walking into a legal nightmare instead of a ready-made family, she sent one text saying, "I can't do this," and deleted everything like it never existed. Tashina didn't throw a party. She just felt a bitter kind of tired. Sometimes, while tucking her daughter in, she'd remember when she and Kashan used to sit in that very same kitchen, eating ramen noodles at 2 in the morning, laughing and debating baby names before Zuri was born. That man, and the man who taught a child to lie on her own mother, still wouldn't fit together in her head. Eventually, she just stopped trying to make them fit. She accepted that sometimes, it'd just be like that. A few months later, they moved to a smaller apartment, closer to the daycare. Zuri's room was a little tighter, but the window faced east, and in the mornings, the sun lit the whole place up. Tashina expanded her online boutique and even hired a part-time assistant. The money wasn't overflowing, but all the bills got paid. She surprised herself with how fast a new life comes together when you don't have somebody constantly trying to tear it apart. At night, the two of them would bake cookies. Not because they looked perfect, but because Zuri loved getting her hands messy in the dough. The kitchen was small and warm, Zuri's artwork covering the fridge. Miss Odette still popped up on the weekends bringing homemade preserves. Miss Yvette greeted Zuri at the daycare door every morning like she was her own blood. Dr. Sevenley. Rosalind saw the little girl a few more times, and finally told Tashina, "You good, Mama? Y'all can take it from here." The pink-eared rabbit ended up on the top shelf of the hallway closet, where Tashina had shoved it the very first night they moved in. She had taken the batteries out. Sometimes, when she was grabbing a towel or organizing, she'd bump into it, pick it up, and smooth out its soft ears. The mechanical voice was dead quiet. The rabbit was just a rabbit. Just an old stuffed animal, the kind kids loved to pieces. Zuri had pretty much forgotten about it. She had new dolls, a new box of crayons, new things to care about. She was growing up fast and happy. One night, deep into the winter, Tashina was standing by the window holding a mug of tea. Her daughter was fast asleep. Outside, that same light drizzle was falling, just like the evening they brought the rabbit home from the mall. But the window was different, the building was different, the life was different. She looked down at the streetlights glowing in the parking lot and thought about one simple thing. She had gone to that store just to buy a funny, talking toy so there would be a little more laughter inside her house. And instead, she brought home the absolute truth. A truth that first knocked everything she knew right out from under her feet, and then forced her to stand straight back up. Things like this, Tashina thought to herself, probably don't just happen by accident. Sometimes, the Lord watches out for us in the most wildly inconvenient ways. Even if he has to use a cheap pink rabbit, a plastic button, and a voice that never should have been recorded in the first place. She finished her tea, washed her mug, clicked off the kitchen light, and walked into her daughter's room. The little girl was sleeping, one leg kicked out with the blanket half on the floor. Tashina pulled the covers back up, fixed her pillow, and kissed her forehead. She stood there for a minute, just listening to that steady, peaceful breathing. Then she stepped out quietly and cracked the door behind her. The apartment was warm, quiet, and truly at peace. For the first time in a long time, truly at peace.